So ladies, gentlemen, fellow Bat family out there, welcome to a brand new The Batman Part 2 discussion series video. Last time I left it around about 3 months since the prior episode, but a lot of you were like, yes, the Batman discussion series is back, so I was like, you know what, I'm not going to leave it that long again. Plus, it kind of works out. I needed content to go up on the channel while I'm away on honeymoon. So I was like, hey, you know, like, this is going to be a follow-up on the previous Batman discussion series video. Just in case you're brand new here, what we do is literally talk, theorize, cast ideas back and forth, expand on previous questions and ideas from previous videos. We just basically dive head over heels into the Batman Part 2. And if you're really ingrained in the fandom of that, I know you'll find a place here. But go ahead, leave a like on this video if you're enjoying the Batman hype train that we're trying to carry on all of our backs here in between news. And hey, if you're not already subscribed, do double check, because it turns out that over half of you who return back to my channel each and every video aren't actually subscribed. And I know lots of you say, well, I thought I was, but you might not be. You may have heard this message from me before, but the only reason I keep saying it again throughout some videos is because I get a bunch of comments of you literally saying, oh, turns out that was me. So from future Boba here, but maybe not, because this, I don't know when this is posting, and it's still past Boba technically. I need to kind of bring up that Hush tease again that I covered in a news roundup not so long ago. It's like, considering I'm releasing a Batman discussion series video that I recorded before that dropped, I need to bring this up again, and I need to get your thoughts on it to dive into it a little bit deeper here. So if you didn't tune into that news roundup, I will cover it again here. We had The Hollywood Reporter interview Peter Craig, the co-writer of The Batman, Part 1, if you will, and man, this is still like intriguing to me. I don't want to really circle around too much and repeat what I said in the first video, but I needed to like still bring it up to apply to the overall speculation that we're still going to do in this video. So to read it out again here, the interviewer asks or says that the Batman certainly has some of the same DNA as Dope Thief. It seemed like that movie was heavily implying that the Riddler's father was the murdered reporter Edward Elliot. You have Craig smiles. It's like, oh, okay, he's just smiling. I don't want to get too excited there. But then the interviewer says they had similar characteristics, and the Riddler's first name was also Edward, so maybe you could say Edward Jr., right? And then the differing last names could easily be explained. But the overall idea would be that Falcone likely had a hand in creating both of these orphans, Bruce Wayne and Edward Nashton, as well as their alter egos, Batman and the Riddler. Did I misread the movie, or was the takeaway quite purposeful? And that's when Peter Craig says the way you're reading it would make some people, including Matt Reeves, very happy. It's the level of detail that was certainly discussed and thought about. It's just what he says next here, though, which is really, I think, what is the most fascinating part. So it's the level of detail that was certainly discussed and thought about, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward. He goes on to say, there was a glitch on IMDb, it looks like I'm working on a sequel right now, but I'm not. It's still Matt, and Mattson Tomlin came on, but let's just say that those ideas you're bringing up are exactly the level of detail people should be looking at, because it's a meticulously wrought world that Matt Reeves is building there. He's incredibly rigorous and incredibly detail-oriented, he is, and that was a part of the fun of working on the Batman with him. So, yes, I obviously will... Peter Craig said there in the latter, it's a meticulously wrought world. He's in, Matt Reeves is incredibly detail-oriented. Matt Reeves has even said to us a few months back, which is what kind of spiraled, the hype for the Batman 2 even more for me, because it was really the first crumbs we got, with him saying, in addition to, this second movie being about Batman's already on this case, there's deeper corruption in Gotham that goes to a place in, that Batman wouldn't have even anticipated in the first film, and that the seeds of this story in Part 2 are all in Part 1. The seeds are in Part 1, and as I said in my news roundup video, one of the most obvious seeds one would go to initially is that Hush Easter egg, but there are other seeds, of course. But now, speaking of Hush, right, while I do want to make it extremely clear, Peter Craig didn't say, oh yeah, I'm going to kind of dip out of answering this question too much because you're talking about Hush, and Edward Nashton, the Riddler, is basically, an amalgamation of Hush, kind of like what has been done with Batman Hush before. He didn't exactly say that, but this is where he literally dips and says, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward. That, to me, certainly and absolutely signifies, all without confirmation, that, this is going in the direction of, at least, my biggest takeaway, as I said in my news roundup, is, at the very least, that Edward Elliot kind of murder that happened from Falcone. Thomas Wayne wanted Falcone to put the fear of God into him. Didn't expect Falcone to murder the guy. Absolutely not. That's not what Thomas Wayne's like, but he did it anyway. And the whole Thomas Wayne paying hush money payments prior to the murder to Edward Elliot, and he didn't take it because he was writing up that report on the Arkhams. He was like, screw you, Thomas Wayne, I'm still gonna publish the story. Like, something about this is going to be maybe occurring again in the future story of the Batman. That's why he's like, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward, right after acknowledging what the interviewer said, that level of detail about how the Riddler's first name is similar to, well, it is Edward, like Edward Elliot, and maybe he could be the son of Edward Elliot. And then, well, as we know in the comics, it's like, okay, well, the Riddler has had a Hush thing before. It's just, no matter what, that bottom line takeaway is, if some of that talk that he doesn't really want to continue too much down the line of is going to spoil what he knows is continuing forward, well, that's kind of like 1 + 1 = 2. You can't really go there because maybe something like that is happening in some way, shape, or form. Now, I don't want to get, overly excited there or, think, okay, absolutely Hush is confirmed to be the second villain. It could be, maybe, if it's not Hush, maybe the Edward Elliot side of things would just get brought up again as Bruce investigates this deeper corruption. And funnily enough, on the channel, we still keep bringing up the Arkhams, right? We keep bringing up Edward Elliot, the Hush money payment. There's something going on there. And this is why I say, we've got a magnet, like a metal detector, and it's beeping, but we're not, exactly on it, but somewhere we are on the trail of these seeds that Matt Reeves has been teasing. And what I like about that, and what I love about doing this Batman discussion series, is that a lot of it is based on speculation, right? This is the purpose of this series in these videos. But given that Matt Reeves is such a meticulous, detail-oriented person, going back and talking about the first movie and how it can connect to the sequel in, episodes of the discussion series like this, isn't as much of a waste of time as I think some people think it could be. Because, it's exactly the level of detail that people should be looking at. And that's what we've been looking at. Thank you for acknowledging that, Peter Craig. Now, having said all of this, even though he wanted to avoid talking about the whole Edward Nashton, the Riddler, link to Edward Elliot because it could spoil what he knows is going forward. The reason why Peter Craig would know what's going forward is because some people might be like, but Boba, the script for part 2 isn't ready yet, and maybe what Peter Craig knew could have changed. It could change, but basically Matt Reeves had a vision, or has had a vision for the Batman part 1, part 2, part 3, which is why I've been calling it a trilogy for years, because back in 2017 on a podcast, he had an overall mapped out idea of where he wanted things to go. It's just, as I said in my news roundup as well, it's obviously you still need to put pen to paper, type out your script. You may have a through line for a trilogy in your head of how Pattinson's Batman will go, what villains you think you want to tackle, and how it will all end, how it will all begin, but you still need to make the scripts, right? So Peter Craig probably knows, obviously, having worked on the Batman Part 1, what was going down there, and talking and co-writing with Matt Reeves during the Batman Part 1, he probably would have been made privy, knew the details about what Matt Reeves' vision for Part 2 and Part 3 was. So that's why he's kind of like, well, maybe some of that's going to spoil what I know is continuing forward. But things can change, so maybe what he knows is going forward or continuing forward with regards to relating to Edward Elliot may no longer be as strong of a thing. I do have to put that out there. But I do kind of want to double down despite this, is that I there's something in me that despite the tease of Gotham Loves a Comeback story from the Joker to Riddler at the end of the movie, which you could argue, right, could set up the Hush thing for the Riddler in a similar way to the comics, in where Riddler wanted to prove that he was like a, superior supervillain. So he essentially created that alter ego of Hush to be like, hey, look, see, I can not only just be the Riddler, but I'm also like this guy pulling off I can't imagine Paul Dano. And granted, adaptations don't copy and paste, so Matt Reeves might do Hush quite differently if he was to make a Paul Dano Hush. But, like, I can't imagine him, like, equipping the guns and, like, going crazy. As he says, my strength is up here, not here. I just can't really imagine that. So, I know people were talking about, could this just mean that, in Matt Reeves' world, as per originally thought by a lot of people, that Hush and Edward Nashton's Riddler that we saw is more of an amalgamation of the same character, and it could just go on to be revealed, all without going full-on Hush mode, that Edward Nashton is indeed the son of Edward Elliot. And that's more really the clarity that we'll get, and it doesn't lead to something much, much bigger. I don't know about that. Like, he could be revealed as the son, but if you want to go there, like, surely there's going to be something a bit deeper that you explore. There is the other idea that I've seen some of you mention as well with regards to, and this popped up in my mind as well, but what if Edward Nashton, the Riddler, has a brother, Thomas Elliot? So Edward Elliot, the reporter, had two sons, and one of them is Tommy, and the report that Riddler put out on the news exposing the Waynes and the Arkhams and the Falcones, revealing that Falcone got Edward Elliot killed, could spur Thomas Elliot, who's still out there somewhere, to, like, go up and go against the... Do you see what I mean? I just feel like, what are the chances of both Edward Elliot's sons being, like, that crazy? Like, so you had the Riddler, okay? And now you're also, because of the Riddler's report, his brother's report, you have Tommy out there somewhere in Gotham be like, you know what? I'm going to go and now try and kill Bruce Wayne. Or so. Do you see what it kind of falls? Obviously, with whatever Matt Reeves could think of, if it even was something similar to that, it would be a lot more fancy. But I don't know, like, that would be it at the core premise, and that just sounds a bit, so, I don't know about, like, the brother situation. So, what I'm left with, and this is why this is such a perplexing thing for me, because Peter Craig, like, 1000% teased something in the direction of Edward Elliot, the reporter that was murdered, and the Hush money payments Easter egg, Hush, being something I can't talk about because it could spoil what I know is continuing forward. I know I keep saying that, but I want to hammer that in. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is where I'm at with it. I, like, bounce back and forth. I'm like, but I don't really see this working out. I don't really see that working out. But then again, Matt Reeves is meticulous, so if he works on the idea that initially, to me, makes it seem like, really, would they do that? It doesn't really seem like something that would be too tangible or believable, of a convincing and, formidable threat to Batman. Matt Reeves, like, with the amount of time he's had to write this script, maybe could, despite everything I've just said, actually take one of those ideas and actually make it really awesome. Like, I always want to leave that door open as well, even if it seems like a bit of a newbie idea of, I'm Edward Elliot's other son now, or like Paul Dano does return back somehow. I still don't know though. I'm gonna shut up, but let me know your thoughts. Back to Past Boba, where we talk a bunch more about the Batman Part 2. So first up is from Cedric Hogan, 25, and this is off of the back of our previous Harvey Dent discussion that we, I love talking about Harvey Dent because it really, I think we all think it's such a natural thing to do, given that the previous district attorney of Gotham, his head kind of blew up. So here, we have Cedric saying, Dent TV series would go hard. Have it be a limited one-season series, and at the end, maybe Easter egg Two-Face for Part 3 for Harvey to become Two-Face. Have him get blasted on the face with acid at the end of the series and not show his face. Just have the hospital monitor beeping and his fingers start twitching to tell that he's alive and will return. That's a cool idea. You guys know that I've been, or if you're brand new here and you didn't check out the previous episode, I do recommend checking it out. Like, it's non-stop nerding out here when it comes to the Reeves Batverse. But with Harvey Dent, I really do believe, like the Penguin, you can do a legal kind of procedural Harvey Dent series in the movie, the part 2 movie, obviously, that we have coming out, I think you should just introduce Harvey. Don't make him Two-Face. Do not repeat The Dark Knight, because, you know, we've got, just to interject here, from some comments, such as Abie, DC, A-B, I can't... Either way, I'm kind of tired of seeing Harvey Dent so much. The Batman trilogy, the Telltale game, the new Batman Arkham VR game, the Joker 2, so many villains for Batman, I would hate for them to do another Harvey Dent story. So, you're not wrong in the sense of seeing Harvey Dent quite a bit, but the way I think about that is that what we're absorbing right now as fans, not everyone is, especially the general audience, right? And not even every fan. For example, I haven't played the Batman VR game. Harvey Dent in Joker 2 was so small. It's not, I guess he got a bit of a scarred face, but to me, I feel like saying, like, let's not pretend like I was just hit with a massive dose of Harvey Dent. So really, yeah, you do have the Telltale. Like, either way, I trust you get my point. That doesn't really make me feel like we've had so much Harvey Dent, but I'm not going to invalidate in how we have had quite a few Harvey Dent appearances across DC Batman media, but I agree with you. Like, so many villains for Batman, I hate for them to do another Harvey Dent story in the sense of, I don't think that they should make Harvey Dent Two-Face in the Batman 2, because I saw this quite a bit in my previous video. Oh, you guys are just obsessed with like repeating The Dark Knight. No, I'm not. I don't want them to repeat The Dark Knight. If anything, that's one thing I've said out the gate again and again that they shouldn't do. Have Harvey be Harvey alongside Bella Real, and maybe Bruce gets involved in that, as I always keep calling back to. Surely she's going to pick him up on that conversation they had at the mayor's funeral in the cathedral, where it's like, Mr. Wayne, you know, you could be doing more for the city and stuff. Why am I talking like Bane? I don't know. Bella Real isn't Bane. Either way, she's going to hit him up again, like the, you know, philanthropy that you can be getting on with. So we all know, and we've smoothed out these ideas, or kind of, you know, tried to smooth out a lot of ideas into what could be happening. And you can do an arc with Harvey and where he fills that DA role, but you don't have to throw acid in his face right away. You just don't. You don't. That can be reserved for later on, or, as we kicked off with Cedric here, you know, towards, or like not even for most of the TV series, just like how Penguin didn't become the Kingpin, right until the tip tail end. So Harvey, you still continue after seeing him, you know, not as a big role in the Batman Part 2. You could kind of liken Harvey Dent's role in the Batman Part 2 to Colin Farrell's role in the Batman Part 1. But then, in his own TV series, you still don't get Two-Face, but you see the cracks of the personality struggles that he's having. And then, yeah, as Cedric is suggesting, I'm not saying it goes down exactly this way, but how cool would it be if you don't even I mean, some people might not find this cool because they might want to see the actual full-on Two-Face, but you could have him in hospital at the very end, knowing that essentially he could appear in Part 3, especially after having spent so much time with him. That's something you need to bear in mind as well when I talk about this. Like, this isn't going to be a quick journey. Like, you're going to see Harvey, you're going to like Harvey, you're going to maybe even like his friendship that he has with Bruce, maybe more other angles they can get into. Then, you know, this is just really hypothetical. If we got a series with him, that would be really cool. You might really root for this guy. I mean, that's the point of the character to begin with. He's this White Knight of Gotham, right? But then, for it to end in such a dark way, and that's really what Batman's Rogues Gallery villains are. They're dark. There's some that are very tragic. You know, Mr. Freeze, Harvey Dent, especially if you've built up the relationship between Bruce and other characters and the good for Gotham that he's done, and then you just see what he's become. There is going to be time spent there. But there is a recent comment that I screenshotted recently that I'm like, why didn't I even think about this? Like, sometimes I'm like, well, what? Because I can actually see this being the case. And I don't want to get too excited here. But Oppenheimer 6321 says, why not have Harvey as the antagonist in Season 2 of The Penguin? And I love that idea. As we know, Season 2 of The Penguin really isn't guaranteed. They're definitely exploring it. Like, this is, you know, a business at the end of the day. There is more organic Penguin story anyway. Matt Reeves, sorry, should I say Colin Farrell signed a contract for 3 movies. That doesn't mean or guarantee a third movie, as I always keep saying. But, you know, optimistic side here, let's just say we're getting 3 movies. He's going to be in 3 movies. They want to make more money, but also I like to think that some creatives in the industry aren't just all about money. Like, I think it's probably, there is politics within this no matter what. When you're Matt Reeves, Lauren LaFranc, and other people like that, you still need to balance your own creativity, what got you into film school, why you liked doing that, but at the same time understand that you kind of need to flirt with, okay, this is still a business and I need to like tread carefully here. Do I really want to be doing this? Do we really want to be doing this? There's other people that have power in these situations, like Colin Farrell. I respect him so much on so many levels, but he at the minute is like, I don't really want to be going there anytime soon. I will absolutely, this is me paraphrasing, but he's like, I will absolutely do it. However, only if we're like not doing it for the sake of it and there is like an authentic story to tell, if not a better one, right? So they're all cracking their heads together. And I, like, without having to add so much more context into that, the reason why I did is because we don't know if we're getting a season 2. But fingers crossed that we do, only in the sense, and I want to add in the caveat there is that if they make a good story. But if we do, and it's a good story, what I've been saying about Harvey Dent this whole time, if we don't get a Harvey Dent spin-off series, because that's actually something I mentioned recently as well, we don't quite know the status of the Batverse getting other actual spin-offs. Once upon a time, even not that long ago, before the Penguin series came out, Matt Reeves said that him and Dylan Clark were exploring other ideas. But then, even more recently, he said that those conversations have steered more towards, okay, like, you know, the Penguin season 2. So I don't know, really, if we're going to get, like, other spin-off shows, like, oh, you're going to get a Catwoman one, oh, you're going to get this one, oh, you're going to get a Harvey Dent one. But what they can do, if they do actually manage to make a Penguin season 2, is have the Harvey Dent arc in the Penguin series. And yes, it makes almost more sense. This is why I love it so much. Again, I'm trying to not get overexcited here, but it makes so much sense. Have him in the Batman Part 2, and in the Penguin Season 2, where it's still the Penguin, you also have the thorn in his side of his criminal empire being Harvey Dent. Now, I do want to register that I've read some people say before that I'm not sure how I'd feel having, like, the origin or a focus of another villain being in another villain's show, because this is ultimately branded the Penguin. I get that, I do. But it's interesting to say that a villain has an antagonist in a series, right? Who is actually really a protagonist until he isn't. Harvey Dent turning into Two-Face. But there's something still so poetic about that, in how, obviously, we don't have Maroni anymore. That's usually the link to the acid being thrown over the face in the comic books. Now we have Oz as Kingpin. We know that he's being subpoenaed. We know that's to come. We know that's not the through line of the Batman Part 2, but it picks up, as Matt Reeves said, with this, continuing story of what Councilman Haiti told Oz, that he needs to look clean as a whistle because, Bella Real's starting this anti-corruption commission to go after people who are crooked and corrupt and bent in the city. So one thing I've always said is there's no way Oz is going to get actually convicted of anything. He's going to weasel his way out. But that I would like to think that if Harvey Dent is on that commission, if Matt Reeves is including him, I don't see why he wouldn't, that he would still gun for him. If we get a Penguin Season 2, it's no longer like Sophia level threat or, Salvatore Maroni level threat that Oz has to deal with. He wants to have friends in a place like this, City Hall. It only makes sense on the organic level. If I was in that writer's room, I would pitch what I just said. The new playground isn't the streets of Gotham. The playground, or should I say the battleground that Oz has now, is the gilded halls of City Hall. Literally. Politics, politicians. And sure, Oz is a cancer in of himself, trying to root himself, and those roots are trying to grow and corrupt, and again, maybe Councilman Cobb storyline. I'm not going to say straight away Mayor Cobb storyline. However, you get where I'm going with this. Who would be in his way? The district attorney who can't be bought, Harvey Dent. That would be sick. And then at the end of the series, since you're no longer doing an origin story to the rise of, filling this power vacuum to the rise of Kingpin status, what can you do? You can have a story about Oz, using his Kingpin status power. It's still going to be his show. Please don't get this twisted. It's still going to be Oz's show. But look how much Sophia you had in the Penguin's show. You can have that much Harvey Dent as well. And that way, I know I keep saying it, but you can do the Harvey Dent decline into Two-Face story. Like, imagine how much he's going to aggravate Harvey, a guy who's trying to play it by the book, but the more he does, the more he's got the devil on his shoulder being like, making him angry, making him... You get where I'm going with this. I trust that you do. Guys, get me on the phone with Matt Reeves. I know that sounds like I'm blowing smoke up my own ass, but Oppenheimer, you've stirred me onto something, and I'm on a train that can't stop now. I love this. And obviously this hinges on the Penguin season 2. But yeah, we see Harvey in the Batman 2. Has the same scenes as Colin Farrell, like in the Batman 1. Nothing crazy happens, just, introductions. It supports whatever's going on with the plot of Part 2, but we see Harvey again in Harvey form in the Penguin Season 2, and that's where we really get this exposition of because we're so early on in Batman's career still at this point in the Batman Part 2, that the world is still fluffing and building out even more. It's all like the tapestry is unfolding, and I love it. This is why I do agree with some people, outside of it being a trilogy, you can see so much more potential for this, for it to be more likened to that of like a Harry Potter situation where you have like 6, 7, however movies there were, like a Part 1, Part 2, definitely like so much more. There is so much more they could do. So Buckteeth Bandit here's 4786 says, I think you're pretty spot on with the Arkham connection, Boba. I'm personally hoping Martha gets a spotlight for the sequel, since in other Batman films, she never gets much of a focus placed on her. Although, I wonder how much darker things could get. As for the main villain, I truly am hoping Hugo Strange is the main antagonist. And out of last video, my god, there's a lot of Hugo Strange comments here. Like, here's another one from Brant Justilian3791 saying, Hush is not the only rogue that could be connected to a deeper corruption in Gotham. Remember the Penguin series. We see Arkham has this hell for Sophia. So Dr. Hugo Strange could be the person controlling Arkham, eventually becoming obsessed with curing Batman, leading to Bruce Wayne coming out of his shell after Hugo's defeat. The villains start breaking out of Arkham. Who dat 4L864 says Hugo Strange is a candidate I don't hear a lot of people talk about for the sequel. The more I think about Hugo, the more I think it is outside the box of what a lot of us think about, right? A lot of us think, okay, maybe Matt Reeves will unwind the fantastical and take a stab at a Rogues Gallery villain like Mr. Freeze, or maybe, I don't know, you could put Poison Ivy out there, and I know some people hate this idea, but make it kind of an eco-terrorist situation. I don't know. Some of us think, okay, Hush seems the most likely, but are they really going to do Hush, with lots of people thinking he's too similar to the Riddler, but at the same time, maybe they could do a way or forge a path with the story in a way that does beckon back to the seeds of Part 1 with the Hush Easter egg, technically the unresolved potential, grudge that he could have against the Waynes. There could just be a lot of stuff that we consider with a lot of the usual characters out there. But Hugo Strange, yes, Hugo is a villain that is applicable to the corruption, because it can go back to the corruption of Arkham State Hospital, Arkham Asylum. It would be so fascinating to have a Rogues Gallery villain who is absolutely obsessed with the Batman. And this could, one thing I think we should look at parallels with in terms of the story is what can be a villain that has parallels with what is naturally coming out in the story for Bruce Wayne. Because Bruce Wayne is emerging more, after all, in Part 2. That's very blatantly obvious at this point. So what villain could do that? Sure, you could have Tommy Elliott, kind of Hush, but also you could have the absolute fixation that Hugo has with learning who the Batman is, learning more about him. Obviously, there's different iterations of how Hugo has been done, but on the bottom line, it's usually an outright obsession. The cool thing about having Hugo Strange as well, that I believe, is that it wouldn't necessarily just be him with regards to, I think Matt Reeves could pair Hugo Strange with him using maybe a patient out of Arkham. Like, maybe he could send a patient, and this seems a bit too comic-y to me, almost to, I don't know if it is, to put in the movie, in the real world, but he could enlist people, I guess is what I should say, to go after Batman or learn more about Batman, and that's a way we could get another Rogues Gallery villain out there. I know Hugo Strange often is, obsessed with genetic engineering, and that's why he kind of went down his own spiral staircase into experimenting on people at Arkham. Again, it's stuff like this we need to think about. Are they really going to do that in this world? Probably not. It doesn't mean he doesn't abuse the patients in Arkham. However, what can still be believed is that he could release someone or another, because he has the power to do so, to be something to go up against Batman as more of a physical threat rather than just an intellectual one, because I do think that the second movie shouldn't do what the first movie did, in how the Riddler wasn't a physical threat, he was an intellectual one. Sure, Batman and the Batman crime saga, epic crime saga, is going to be, each time, a new case, a detective story, and he's not always going to get in a fight, right? So we have to think about how we're going to get our combat in the films. We could have just, everyday fighting, like at the train station or at the Iceberg Lounge, like we saw, or the Riddler goons who, were obviously following Riddler. I think for part 2, I think fans, not that they should rely on this, because it's not a pew, 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 action, action, action type Batman movie, and I don't think they're ever going to truly be that. However, you can give us more of a physical threat, but at the same time, it is still somewhat being recycled in the same way as the first movie. Riddler had Riddler goons, Hugo Strange has whatever he might come up with. But what I can say is at least maybe Hugo Strange could cause more problems in the city for Batman as an opportunity to study him. So that gives us more combat that we want to see, because that is one big one that a lot of people have, is more action, right? And I think that would fit in, right? Like, so Hugo, one way, hey, how can I actually, it's not like I can call Batman up. Let me release this patient into this part of Gotham, start a murder spree, start whatever. Like, it could be horrific, right? And he knows that there's a high likelihood that Batman could come and sweep down, and, he could try and detain him, he could try and do whatever. This is just me spitballing right now. But I do really like, I feel like Hugo Strange is so versatile to use in a, even if you ignored everything I just said, you could probably create a whole new situation which sounds just as interesting, if not 10 times more interesting than what I said. And it's like, yeah, maybe we should do Hugo Strange. The only issue I have right now is that Hugo within the canon of the universe would kind of feel maybe a bit, maybe not actually, maybe I was about to say out of left field, because what we knew about the Penguin series is that we had that Dr. What's his name? Not Ventress, maybe it's Ventress, something like that, who was the head of Arkham. So what I was getting at is that, well, Hugo isn't at Arkham then. But then I realized that was with Sophia 10 years ago in the past. And since then, we did learn, I believe we learned, that Julian said that he's not there anymore. And, like, doctors came and went. Sophia said that, doctor after doctor. So, you could argue Hugo Strange came in the past 6, 7, 5, 4, whatever, however many amount of years. So, technically, he could be at Arkham. But then, I kind of tripped myself up because, Batman was let into the interrogation room, well, to talk to Joker, wasn't he? And you could say to me, well, Boba, he just snuck in. Well, don't forget that he literally got buzzed in. And when he was waiting to leave, when Joker was laughing his ass off at him, he pressed the buzzer and he had to wait for probably some guard to let him, buzz open the door. All I'm trying to say is that Hugo would have jumped on that chance, right? So, Hugo Strange, I do believe Hugo Strange is a villain. Not that I know Matt Reeves, one that he would be interested in exploring, because quite simply, it just seems, after watching dozens of hours of this man talk, it fits with the themes of what he's already described with part 2, the, identity, Hugo obsessed with Batman's identity. But one thing we need to think about and always take into account, again, we always need to be careful about our rose-tinted glasses, like our fan goggle desires for part 2. How does this apply to what has already been teased with the deeper corruption? Something that Bruce or Batman, as Matt Reeves said here, couldn't have even imagined in the first film. Well, Hugo could have ties or have more knowledge for Bruce, or bring about that to the forefront of attention through how this could link back to Arkham, the Arkhams. He could have knowledge of stuff. I don't know. This is where when you start to think about that, we don't have to have all the answers. I don't even want all the answers, despite what a lot of people believe. I like having fun with the puzzle pieces and, you know, throwing them up in the air or seeing how the dice land and be like, okay, maybe this adds up to that, right? That's what the fun of speculation is. But sometimes when I think about that with Hugo, as much as I feel like I'm on the ball, I'm like, yeah, but, you know, this deeper corruption, sure, we've had the idea of maybe the Arkhams wasn't a murder-suicide, it was actually something that happened to them and stuff like that. But how does this become so systemic within Gotham, and how could Hugo link to that? This is where, you know, in this discussion series, I guess I bounce it back off of you now. Like, what do you think of that? How do you think that can contribute to what Matt Reeves has said already? And again here, just to remind you about what Matt Reeves said, the quote is, "It's another mystery that's going to dig into the epic story about deeper corruption, and it goes into places that he couldn't even anticipate in the first one. The seeds of where this goes are all in the first movie." And one thing Matt Reeves always said as well, and this could just really be the perspective he always wants to maintain despite whatever villain it is. So he says that a lot of the times what happens is you establish the Batman in the first movie, and the next movie is the Riddler's movie or the Joker's movie, and the Rogues Gallery takes center stage. I wanted to find a way to keep Batman as a central arc of the movies. So, you know, when it comes to this next movie, despite what I just said, and you know, how it goes to a place that he couldn't even anticipate in the first one, he's stumbling across something on this new case that will still put Batman as the central arc in these movies. I've always loved the idea, no matter what, like, even though there's still a central plot, because there was, you know, in the first movie, you had other things going on. And in part 2, that will always be the case as well. Part 1, there was a systemic corruption going on with all the pillars of authority, the foundational pillars that make up a city, the DA, the mayor, etc., etc. But you still had this going on with Falcone, who was, you know, obviously involved in all that heavily. He was at the core of it. But you had him and the Iceberg Lounge, the 44 Below, you had the Penguin, you had, you know, other bits and pieces, and I think that will be the same in part 2. So, you know, whatever villain it ends up being, or in this case, let's say Hugo, I do like the idea, as Brant Justilian says here, like, you know, maybe there is an obsession, despite whatever the deeper corruption is, with curing Batman, like curing him, right, and figuring him out. And I've always loved the idea of, you know, the Batman imposter comic book. I'm not saying this is going to be the case, but I would love the idea of Hugo tempting or just doing something with Batman, because in that comic book, you have another Batman out there. And I don't know, I just feel like if there was some kind of taunt or kind of situation like that with Robert Pattinson's Batman, that'd be so cool. And this is just me, honestly, going off the edge of the cliff right now. But you may have heard me talk about this before, but you can imagine Hugo or some other villain doing something like that. And not only that, with the theme of identity, with this imposter Batman or something like that out there, killing people and making people think that Batman is a murderer and dispensing justice in, like, a very messed up way. That could be super hard to dig yourself out of. Like, how would Bruce deal with that? But again, I keep asking myself, how does this, you know, lean into the deeper corruption in that second movie, which is where we kind of circle around on that topic and just kind of scream out loud and be like, you know, what is with this deeper corruption and how does it apply? Well, John Rodriguez here says, I think there's 2 other ways besides Hush that makes sense that would result in a number of different villains. They've already exposed corruption in the city, and it's the whole system. They could address that the system puts innocent people away in Arkham, and that's part of the corruption. This was somewhat addressed in The Penguin with Sophia. I think if they went that route, you could see Scarecrow or Strange being the villain or villains inside Arkham. Another route they could go is showing corruption within Wayne Enterprises, considering Bruce has been neglecting the business. This could lead to Mr. Freeze and him being an underfunded scientist of Wayne Enterprises doing cryo research to cure his wife, and the flooding could have affected the lab he's working at, causing him to have a vendetta against Wayne, or it could introduce someone else and they find out that the drops are actually made somewhat at Wayne Enterprises and Bruce never knew. And to tackle like the broader ideas of what was presented there, this is definitely something that I think we all need to consider. Could the corruption be something we're looking too deep into when it comes to what Matt Reeves said? We automatically jump to the Court of Owls, and I do agree, like, at face value, you think, what is more deeper corruption than the corruption in the first movie? A deeper corruption that puppeteers all of that and set Gotham on this path, centuries ago, even. But there could be deeper corruption that Bruce couldn't have imagined in the first movie that really does organically apply. Just with regards to, yes, he has been neglecting Wayne Enterprises. Sure, Alfred's kept a bit of a lid on it, and he's tried to, prod Bruce, being like, hey, we need to meet with the accountants, and that's a deleted scene that we've never seen, but there's pictures to it. God damn, Matt Reeves, please release those scenes. But either way, right, there could be some bad that Wayne... to be fair, yeah, if Bruce has been neglecting Wayne Enterprises, how does he know what's going on with it? How does he know that his company isn't contributing to lots of bad things within Gotham? And sure, whenever I have brought this up quite a long time ago now in the past, some people say it's too similar to Batman Begins, but I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. Using the same material at the core, but doing something completely different with it or expanding on it in a way that ripples out to a larger thing. It's like saying, oh, well, you did Alfred in Batman Begins. You can't do Alfred in the Batman or the Batman Part 2. And I know those two things aren't quite the same, but I don't know. I wouldn't be against it. Let's put it that way. And sure, you could also say Alfred would be aware if anything shady is going on, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Who knows what Wayne Enterprises could be up to, but... that could be an organic thing. Like maybe Wayne Enterprises has bankrolled things that Bruce wouldn't approve of, or has supported shady things that lends into the overall corruption, the deeper corruption in Gotham that he couldn't have imagined in the first movie, as Matt Reeves says. I wouldn't rule anything out when it comes to this, and I do think that could pertain to the identity journey of Bruce coming out even more and more into his own as Bruce Wayne, because what comes with that is starting to show your face a bit more in all ways, like not only to the public and making more of an effort, more of a change as, equipping the Wayne name, but also looking at your own bloody Wayne Enterprises business and trying to utilize and, look down the different avenues of what's really going on with your business. Is every single, let me put it this way, it's kind of hard to believe, right? Is every single person hired at Wayne Enterprises, that big-ass building in Gotham, and all the higher-up bosses there, like board members, is every single one of them sound completely scot-free in terms of not feeling any guilt with any kind of corruption? If you think about it, the amount of people that are corrupt who were the pillars of Gotham, you're telling me that a company wouldn't have some... So I don't know, it could be something that Matt Reeves could have, if it's even not a major part of the film, it could be a peppered in little thing. It's okay, this is something we look at, or it could lend to some kind of shadiness, but Bruce sorts it out fairly quickly through having a hands-on approach of the company. Or maybe it's not as hands-on as they're making it out to be, but he's putting one eye to it at least, and that makes Alfred happy, and they identify a couple of things. But I do love the idea of how Wayne Enterprises, maybe there's divisions that, you could have someone like Victor Fries or other people being affected in a way that disgusts Bruce, or he genuinely had no idea that was happening out of neglect for that part of his life. But one thing he's learned as Batman, and by the end of the first film, is that there are other things that affect Gotham more than he could ever imagine. First, it was this criminological experiment, right? And he has in his monologue, if anything, he's saying crime it's got worse. Oh my God, right? Well, I don't know if what I'm doing is having an effect. But he's now realizing that there's been a corrupt DA, a corrupt mayor. And sure, maybe he knew certain aspects of this, for crying out loud. It's not hard to imagine that you've got bent cops and things like that. Bruce isn't that naive. But now to really open his eyes and be like, oh yeah, but there's other things that can have ripple effects. For example, the City Hall people diverting power away from Crown Point to give lights to the rich neighborhoods. That's just a small factor of it in terms of what potential damage Wayne Enterprises and other places like that could do to the city, all without his know-how. So I'm just saying, I know I'm broadly speaking there, but I think there are various roads that they can go down, and I would love to know if you would support that being a part of the story to help flesh out the Bruce Wayne side of it all as he finally opens the door up and he's like, hey, look, I'm here, people. You know, I'm not saying it's going to be like that in part 2. He's probably not going to be that bold. No, if anything, as I've always said, I expect Bruce to be very coy still. But, you know, it's like when we've all gone to a job interview or into a social situation, if we're not very extroverted people, and we forced ourselves to. You compose yourself. I expect that version of Bruce. Whatever version of Bruce that Robert Pattinson would act that as, that's the version we'll be getting. I don't think he's going to be as well of an actor as what Christian Bale literally was like. You know, he would completely drop his face and roll his eyes behind closed doors. But in front of other people, he was laughing, joking, swimming in hotel pool lobbies. I don't expect that. I really don't. But I still expect a man who's wearing a mask in public, and it's a draining effort, because I think we could all relate to that in some way, shape, or form. 123 Selina says, regarding the combat question that we got into the previous video, my interpretation of that was, would you like to see Batman a bit more reserved, stealthy, even to say? Do you think he'll continue to just walk into gunfire, or will he take out targets using stealth? And I saw some people say, like, come on, Boba, like, Batman will improve in the sequel, like, as if he wouldn't. It's not that I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I'm just saying I wouldn't expect crazy developments, because it really is a small gap of time between movies. But what I would expect naturally is some changes, because, you know, movie to movie you would just see some stuff. And, you know, with 123 Sloana's interpretation of that question, I do agree. I've spoken about this before. Yeah, you're not gonna have. I think Batman should learn, because no matter what, I think people are very valid in when they say Batman just walked over to that guy and he just got shot in the chest. Like, you know, I think you are relying a bit too much on your armor, and I know some people don't like that critique because he is human, so he has to rely on his armor. But when you do that, man, it's like, come on. Like, your armor's there to save your life, absolutely, because you're not a superhero in the typical conventional sense. In the second movie, you would like to see a bit more less, you know, Batman is confident, but not being silly in that situation. So I've always said they almost set it up. I think they did even set it up when he put the bomb on the rafters and the smoke came out, and that's when he started spanking them with their own guns. Hey man, maybe I'm going to start carrying around smoke pellets on me or some kind of smoke thing. Instead of a big smoke grenade, maybe we can actually have a more Wayne Enterprises condensed version of that. That kind of stuff. So yes, I would absolutely love to see stealth. It is like a must-have in my checkbox to see a typical grapple hook down, grapple hook up. I think it would be a missed opportunity if they didn't do it. The whole, they say I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows. Like, bro, well, go on in. Become a shadow that swallows up like another train station gang or something like that. I'm not saying I wouldn't want him to fight out in the open once he's lost the element of surprise. Absolutely. But Matt Reeves, you know you would be mining a gold mine that would make people's jaws drop. In your grounded, realistic world, if you could pull off a realistic, like, swoop down, stealth takedown, and even seeing it from his point of view, like going along the rails on top of somewhere, that would just be so cool. And sure, when the jig is up, like, he goes down there, starts freaking hand-to-hand combat MMA style. As I said in my previous video, maybe there's a little bit less furiosities, maybe more John Wick about it, just seamless, more swift. That would be awesome. But I think we do need stealth above anything else. That would be so satisfying to see. So here we have from Grim Nobody, the way you laid out Martha's story sounds very similar to the way Sophia's story played out in The Penguin. Silenced because she knew the truth about her mother's murder and tossed in Arkham and declared crazy. This is something I completely agree with, and it's one of the only things that makes me doubt that really awesome theory that I think maybe Scott SAN first said, and then I just expanded on it, and I've been leaning on a lot. And, you know, quick summary of that is, as I kind of got into earlier, you know, Martha's parents, as the Riddler exposed, there was a bit of a cover-up with regards to the whole deaths of her parents. But it was, you know, really a murder-suicide. Her mother killed her father. And I've been saying, what if there's more going on there? And maybe, you know, they were actually both murdered. but maybe Martha knew the truth of this, and that's why she was in and out of institutions, as the Riddler literally said, and he showed evidence for. You see her being dragged back as she's trying to go to the fence. But really, she was innocent, and believe it or not, I'm pretty damn sure I was saying that before the Penguin released. And then in the Penguin, obviously we had Falcone frame his daughter for these murders of these women. And nobody believed her. Maybe some people did, but you had the family basically support Falcone, saying that, oh yeah, she's crazy. And when she was put into Arkham, she was there for 10 years, and she just had to stomach it. The Martha story, knowing that there's more going on with her parents, and she wanted to figure it out, but she was in and out of mental institutions, trying to reconcile that. Maybe it did decline her mental health, but maybe the powers that be, some people were saying the court, I don't know, wanted to silence her, and maybe when she met Thomas, he coaxed her out of it, saying, look, I know there's more to your truth, but this is doing more harm than good. Maybe we should let it lie for now, and we can look into it later on, but because we've got a target on our backs from the people who killed your parents and framed it as a murder-suicide situation. Unfortunately, it is a bit too similar to what played out in the Penguin, and for that reason, it's making me think, yeah, maybe the whole idea about Martha, the reason why she was in and out of institutions, her parents' deaths, there isn't anything more to it than what it was as the Riddler portrayed it. Maybe there isn't anything more to it. That's just the way it was. And she was in and out of institutions with, just simply mental health issues, very legitimate mental health issues, and not because she was being forced to be in there to keep her silent, in a similar way to how Sophia was forced to be in Arkham to keep her silent. That would be too much of a story parallel. And that bums me out a bit, because I think the more you really ponder that, the more like, yeah, realistically, would they repeat a similar theme? And the reason why we explored all of that before the Penguin, obviously, is because of what Matt Reeves said, in how, there's this deeper corruption, and it goes to places that he couldn't have even anticipated in the first one. Well, one of those places would be, oh, damn, like, my mum was wrapped up in this. Like, I learned, and he says the seeds were all in the first movie. Well, one of the seeds that Bruce could look into more is Martha and the Arkhams. I'm not so sure anymore, so I'd love to know if you have any modifications, or if you think it could still happen, even though there are similar story beats there. So the Film Fanatic handle here says, I didn't think the Court of Owls would be a good threat for the Batman Part 2, but a few comics later, I'm a new man. This is something I see a lot. I'm not saying the animated stuff is bad or anything like that, but I see some people say that the Court of Owls is, whatever. And I'm not saying that they haven't read the comics, but one thing I do find is that sometimes people at concept think, okay, hidden, corrupt, kind of deep puppet masters in Gotham. Okay, cool, but no, I really want this villain instead, Killer Croc or whatever. But once they read the Court of Owls and the City of Owls, as the Film Fanatic said here, I didn't think that there'd be a good threat for Part 2, but a few comics later, I'm a new man. Like, trust me, if you haven't read the New 52's Court of Owls, City of Owls, it's kind of what absolutely catapulted me back into comics back in 2015, 2016? Not just comics, rather, but mostly Batman. I've always been a Batman fan, but at the same time, that just really, it gripped me so much, and I'll forever be grateful to those stories for getting me, I wonder if I would have my channel if it wasn't for getting into it at the time in the way I did. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on that, if you've read the comic, if you haven't read the comic, but also, do you have any similar experiences to me where you've read a comic like that and you're like, oh my God, I don't read comics all the time, maybe, but I did this one. I bought the hard book kind of thing, read it, and I'm now transported, and it started like a mega fandom for you. Was it a Batman story? Now, with regards to Penguin and stuff, this is something I didn't even really think about. So Worm4676 says, might end up seeing some different hitmen go after Harvey when he sees Oz trying to get political. You got Deathstroke for one, Bane, etc. Dent's going to have to ruffle some feathers if he's going to get the attention of the Owls and get those types of guns after him, though. So I don't know about Deathstroke and everything like that in this universe. I know people really want that, but I personally don't see Matt Reeves doing Deathstroke. But one thing I absolutely really liked about this idea is that even in the second movie, even despite what we talked about with, maybe Harvey being in the Penguin series as an antagonist to Penguin, and that furthers that storyline along. Maybe in part 2, before the Penguin season 2, I think it would be pretty cool to have a part of the plot that Bruce feels like he has to protect Harvey Dent. So again, hypothetically assuming that Harvey Dent is in a new position as the new DA. We need a new DA, but yeah, Oz really doesn't like this guy, so maybe he's going to try get him killed. Oz easily has the power to do that, and you know, just like in the first movie, and how we had Gil Colson, the DA, in Falcone's pocket, Oz is gonna want to have people in his pocket as well. That's just the way it works. So if he doesn't listen, he might send people after him, but Bruce knows... Bruce, this is something we all need to bear in mind as well. He knows that Oz is going to be the new Kingpin. Sure, I know a lot of people wanted to have Batman in the Penguin series, but we're finally going to learn whatever Batman's opinion is on all of this. There is a new status quo of power now, and he will know that he's going to have to keep tabs on Oz, but also you probably can predict a bit of behavior in terms of he's going to want to have people in his pocket, and what if Bruce, in both Bruce Wayne mode that we're going to get in the second movie and Batman mode, has to look out for Harvey because he might send a few people after him. So not acid initially. Again, the acid thing can happen way later down the line. Again, maybe in Penguin season 2. And this could just be in one scene in the movie where Batman saves Harvey Dent's life from the Penguin's hitmen. I don't know. It's just a little fleeting idea I wanted to take out of this comment. Didn't think of it before, and I thought, hey, that's an actual sequence I could imagine seeing in the Batman Part 2. So Jake Youngin says, Boba, first off, love your channel. Thank you very much, man. I can never have too much DC content. What are your thoughts on Joker for the Batman 2? Seeing where the Penguin series left off, with no solid hints towards other main key villains of Batman, do you think Matt might make Joker his main big bad for the Batman 2? I would say X to doubt on that one. I really don't think Barry Keoghan's Joker is going to be the main villain. Never say never, but, going through the systematic process of, does Joker really pertain to the deeper corruption? Does it go to a place that he couldn't have imagined in the first movie? At the same time, I don't want to get too much tunnel vision on that, because I think that's where we could also go into some mistakes of, it doesn't mean, you can't, for example... Again, you had other villains in part 1 that weren't inherently always a part of this deeper corruption. You had other characters, rather. So in part 2, you can have other themes and corruption and stuff explored while decorating the cake with other characters. So Joker could be one of them. But as the main villain, I don't think the villain of part 2 would be someone like the Joker, because... if one of the main core heartbeats of part 2, just like part 1, is once again corruption, which surprised me a while ago, because I always said after the Batman 1, sure, Gotham will always have corruption, and that's going to be a part of the story, but I don't expect for them to lean on it as hard as they did in part 1. It could be more of a physical thread, just something more like another tale of Batman, right? Another investigation, another case nonetheless, but maybe not leaning as hard into corruption. But no, part 2 is going deeper into corruption. I know some people aren't big on that, but, I think Matt Reeves will still cook. But Joker, this is where I always keep thinking, you have to think of, can they really pertain to the deeper corruption that seems to be the heartbeat? And I don't think so. Again, not ruling out Joker. I think Joker's going to be in the movie. Barry Keoghan always has been very coy and very smiley when being asked that question. I found that very positive. It doesn't mean he read the script back then, especially when Andy Serkis and Robert Pattinson only recently know what the story is about. But that doesn't mean that someone like Barry Keoghan didn't have talks a long while ago, saying that, yeah, we kind of, between Matt and him, I kind of plan to have you. You might not have a big role or even a smallish role, but you could have another similar little peppered in there role, like part 1, to make you have a bigger role in part 3. I just feel like he knows he's going to be back in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just another Arkham giddy little scene or whatever, right? I wouldn't expect big things from Joker, but I do think Joker will be sprinkled in there. So Rust says, I just want more Miss Gigante in the Batman 2. Oh, me too, man. Me too. I just don't know how. Unless you have Selina coming back in, and there's a scene of Selina visiting Sophia in Arkham, which just feels pretty redundant to do. Sure, if they shot that scene, would I sit here and watch it and be like, that's awesome? Yeah, but you have to think about the reality of the situation, and are they going to do that? I don't know. I don't see how it's relevant for now. I think it's relevant in the Penguin Season 2, so maybe Harvey Dent, in the Penguin Season 2, if he's the antagonist of the Penguin, he could go to Sophia's cell and maybe be like, look, all of these things that Councilman Haiti pinned on you. Sure, you may be a terrorist and you literally blew up a car in that underground tunnel and people may have died as a result of that, so don't get me wrong, you kind of deserve to pay time, serve time. But was this you? Was that you? And as we know, with the way the Penguin presented that to Councilman Haiti, he was really speaking about a lot of his own achievements in his book and pinned them all on Sal Maroni and Sophia Gigante. And he could learn more from her. That's a genuine way we could see Kristen Milioti return as Sophia Falcone. I think that would be really cool as well. Like Harvey following up. He's really ticked off by Penguin, hates how he's slipping through the cracks, through the subpoena, if anything, rising up in City Hall. What the hell, dude? Like, we can't let this happen. Yet he's buying people off. He's seeing the system. Like, there's nothing more that Harvey Dent would detest. It's like the antithesis of what he stands for. Hey, I'm going to go to Sophia Falcone. Brilliant. But in the Batman 2, man, I just don't see it. But hey, if you guys have any ideas to see Kristen Miliotti's Sophia Gigante, sure, you could say the Catwoman thing, but again, that just seems a bit more like, hey, sis, now I'm going to meet you. But Matt Reeves really wouldn't waste screen time on that, I don't think. And I hate to use the word waste, but like, he cut the Joker scene out. He cut this Oz scene out, which I thought was pretty cool and really was a good setup for the Penguin Season 1. So yeah, any ideas, guys, let me know. As usual, guys, unfortunately, I think I failed at answering as many questions as I wanted to because I kind of got into the rabbit hole on a couple of those questions there, but I hope you enjoyed the Batman nerd out with me once again. Let me know your thoughts on everything I had to say in this video. We will be doing another one of these, but we'll probably be leaving a little bit more time between the next episode, unless you guys absolutely scream for it down in the comments. But, we're closer, well, we're getting closer and closer to more news as we get towards the summer, slowly but surely. The pre-production should be starting, and then a couple of months after that, maybe some casting news. That's if, the October 2027 release date does not change. I don't want to scare you. I don't know why I'm talking about this. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Content will be going back to normal soon. I'm obviously away right now. That's enough for me. Double check the subscribe button. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, fellow Bat family, in the next video. Goodbye.